One morning, a voice note sent to the wrong person shattered everything. "She's a nuisance," my daughter's voice echoed as she discussed plans to send me away and take everything I worked for. The shocking words left me numb, but they also sparked something in me, a fire I thought I'd lost. What happened next? I wasn't going down without a fight. I'd love to know how far this story is traveling. Comment below and tell me where you're listening from. And subscribe now so you don't miss the next chapter. You won't want to miss what happens next. My name is Evelyn and I'm 68 years old. For most of my life I've poured everything I had into my daughter Sarah. After my husband George passed away when Sarah was just a baby, I became her entire world. I worked long hours as a housekeeper, and no matter how tired I was, I always made sure Sarah had everything she needed. I didn't have a college education or fancy things, but I always made sure Sarah felt loved and taken care of. I never expected anything in return, really. Not from Sarah, not from anyone. But that doesn't mean I didn't hope. I hoped that one day when I was older, my daughter would take care of me the way I had taken care of her. I didn't expect a mansion or a life of luxury, but I imagined that she would be there for me when I needed her most. But everything changed the moment I heard the voice message. It was a Sunday morning and I was sitting at the kitchen table sipping my tea trying to gather my thoughts. I checked my phone to see if Sarah had called, and that's when I saw a new voice message from her. I thought maybe she was calling to check in, but when I hit play my world crumbled. "Adam, I can't take it anymore. I can't stand having Mom here. She's a nuisance. He's always in the way, always underfoot. I've been looking at some places for her like that assisted living one. It's only $1,200 a month, and with the money we save we can finally fix up the house. We've already talked to Carol, she works at the real estate office, and she's going to help us get the house transferred to our names. It'll be easy." My heart dropped right then and there. Sarah, my own daughter, was planning to put me in some home and take my house. My hands started to shake as I heard her continue. "And once Mom's gone, we'll have the house and we'll be able to fix it up like we always wanted. No more worrying about her cluttering up everything." I could barely breathe. I wanted to scream, but no sound came out. I had worked my entire life, scrubbing floors, cleaning other people's houses, just to make sure Sarah had everything she needed. I'd even sacrificed my own health to pay for her college education, even sold my last bit of jewelry to make sure she had the life I couldn't give her. And this is how she repaid me? Like I was nothing more than an old, useless burden? I listened to the message over and over, hoping, praying I had misheard. But no, it was the same cold, heartless words. Sarah didn't want me anymore. She was planning to take everything I had worked for. The house I built with my own hands, brick by brick, was now just a commodity to be taken, sold, and forgotten. I had to get out of there. I couldn't stay in that house one more second, not knowing what they were planning behind my back. I had always told myself that Sarah would care for me when I got older, that she would never hurt me like this. But now I could see the truth. She saw me as a problem. No, I wasn't going to let her win. Not this time. I've lived 68 years and I've learned that sometimes the only way to defend yourself is to take matters into your own hands. The first thing I did was gather my most important documents. I had a plan and it was time to put it into motion. Sarah had underestimated me, but she was about to learn a hard lesson. You never mess with a grandmother who has lived through as much as I have. I spent that entire night awake, staring at the ceiling, unable to shake the image of Sarah's voice in my head. I kept hearing those cold words over and over. "Once Mom's gone, we'll have the house." I had always thought Sarah loved me, that she would take care of me when I grew old like I took care of her when she was young. But here I was 68 years old, and my own daughter wanted to send me away to some home where I'd be nothing more than another expense. I knew right away I couldn't just sit back and let it happen. I wasn't going to be some helpless old woman who let her family walk all over her. Not after everything I had done for them. The next morning I got up early just before the sun rose. I dressed in my most elegant dress, crimson red, the one I had saved for special occasions. It made me feel strong, like I could take on the world. I packed my most important documents, my bank statements, my house deeds, and a few other papers I had kept safe over the years. I had no idea how long this would take or how far I would have to go, but I knew that I wasn't going to let them take everything from me without a fight. The first place I went was my bank. I knew my accounts well, and I had a feeling that Sarah had been tampering with them. She had always been in charge of handling some of my finances, but this time I had a hunch. When I walked in, I was greeted by Nora, the branch manager who had known me for years. "Good morning, Miss Evelyn. How can I help you today?" she asked with a smile. "I need to review my accounts, Nora," I said, my voice calm but firm. "I've been noticing some suspicious activity. Can you pull up all the transactions from the past 6 months for me?" Nora raised an eyebrow but didn't question me. She began typing on her computer, pulling up the records. I watched her screen closely, and it didn't take long for me to notice the strange withdrawals. "I see several transactions here where my daughter withdrew money," I said, pointing to the screen. "Isn't this unusual?" Nora frowned and looked closer. "Miss Evelyn, these withdrawals are made out to your daughter. She signed documents authorizing these transactions." "Excuse me?" I asked, my heart racing. "She's never been authorized to take money from my accounts. I never signed anything like that." Nora looked at me, clearly surprised. "Let me double-check, Miss Evelyn." She went back through the paperwork and confirmed what I feared. Someone had forged my signature. "It's a forgery," I said, a chill running down my spine. "I didn't authorize any of these withdrawals. I need you to freeze my accounts, Nora. Immediately." Nora's face turned pale as she began typing rapidly to secure my accounts. "I'm so sorry, Miss Evelyn. I'll report this immediately." After I left the bank, I felt a cold determination settle in my chest. I wasn't going to let Sarah have my house or my money. The very next thing I did was drive to Clark & Associates, the law office where I had my will and trust managed. As I sat in the waiting room, I couldn't help but think about all the years I had spent working tirelessly for Sarah. All the sacrifices, the sleepless nights, and the exhaustion I had endured. It was all for this moment. It wasn't about revenge. It was about protecting what was mine. When Lawyer Clark finally called me into his office, I showed him the forged bank documents, along with the proof that Sarah had been stealing from me. He was appalled. "I can't believe this," he said, shaking his head. "This is clear financial fraud, and if we act quickly, we can stop her from going any further." "Then let's do it," I replied, my voice steady. "I want her to face the consequences of her actions. I don't care if she's my daughter. What she's done is unforgivable." Clark nodded. "We'll file a legal complaint against Sarah and her accomplice, Adam. But we'll need to get everything in order first. I'll have the paperwork ready for you to sign." I left his office feeling a sense of relief I hadn't felt in days. It wasn't over yet, but I had taken the first steps in reclaiming control of my life. I spent the next few days in a fog of determination. Every move I made felt calculated, deliberate. I had taken steps to protect my finances and my home, but it wasn't enough. I needed to confront Sarah and Adam directly. I needed them to know that I wasn't the helpless old woman they thought they could manipulate anymore. I was no longer afraid of them. I was no longer afraid of being alone. The day came when I finally gathered everything I needed to make my move. I knew Sarah would be at the house, preparing for another one of her family dinners, where everything seemed perfect on the outside, but underneath it all, I could feel the tension. I wasn't going to let this go any longer. I drove to the house that I had worked my entire life to build, the house that had once been a home full of love and laughter. When I arrived, I parked my car a little further down the street, making sure no one saw me. I needed to have the upper hand. As I walked up to the front door, I could hear the low murmur of voices inside. I took a deep breath and knocked. The door opened almost immediately, and there stood Sarah, her face lighting up with a fake smile. "Mom, what are you doing here?" "We were just about to start dinner," she said, her tone sweet but with a nervous edge. "I'm not here for dinner," I replied, my voice cool and composed. "I need to speak with you, Sarah. Alone." She hesitated for a moment, and I could see the flicker of panic in her eyes. But then she stepped aside, letting me in. "Come in, I guess. What's going on?" I walked into the living room, my heart pounding but my resolve stronger than ever. Adam was sitting on the couch, flicking through channels on the TV. He didn't even look up when I walked in. But I didn't care. I had come here for one reason only, and I wasn't leaving until it was settled. "Sit down, Mom," Sarah said, her voice tight. "What's all this about?" "I've heard enough, Sarah," I said, my voice hard. "I know what you've been planning." Her face turned pale, and I saw her eyes flicker toward Adam. She was trying to read the room, figure out if I had somehow found out everything. "You have no idea what you're talking about," she said, her voice shaking slightly. "I don't know what kind of nonsense you've been listening to, but..." Cut the act, Sarah, I interrupted. I know about the house. I know about the money you've been taking from me. I know about the place you've already picked out for me. The $1,200 a month, assisted living home. And I know you've been working with Carol to get my house transferred into your name. The color drained from her face. Adam shot up from the couch, his eyes wide with panic. They hadn't expected this. They hadn't expected me to figure it out. I continued, my voice calm but sharp. I also know about the fake documents, Sarah. The ones you had forged to make me seem like I'm losing my mind. To make it easier to get rid of me. You've been planning my downfall and you thought I wouldn't notice. Sarah took a step back, her lips trembling. You don't understand, Mom. We just couldn't keep doing this. Adam and I have been struggling. We needed the house. We needed the money. I felt a rush of cold fury wash over me, but I kept it under control. You needed the money? I repeated slowly. You needed the money, so you planned to take everything I have. You thought I wouldn't catch on. You thought I was just some old woman waiting to die, but you were wrong. Mom, please don't do this, Sarah begged, her voice breaking. We were just trying to help ourselves. Help yourself. I scoffed, my anger rising. By stealing from your own mother? By plotting to send me away and take my home? Adam stepped forward, his face turning red. This is a setup, Evelyn, he spat, his voice low and dangerous. You don't know what you're talking about. He is confused. You don't know what's best for you. You're old and you're too much of a burden. It's time to let go. The words hit me like a slap across the face, but they only made me angrier. You think I'm a burden, Adam? I asked, my voice deadly calm. You think I'm too old to make decisions for myself? You don't get to decide that for me. You don't get to tell me when I'm done. I've been taking care of you and Sarah for years, and now you want to throw me away like I'm nothing? I pulled out my phone and showed them the audio message Sarah had sent to Adam. You were right about one thing, I said quietly. I am not as naive as you think. I heard everything you said. Every word. And now I'm going to make sure you both face the consequences. The room went silent. Sarah's face was flushed with shame and Adam's eyes were wide with panic. I stood up, my hands trembling but my resolve stronger than ever. I'm done being the victim. I'm not going to let you get away with this, Sarah. I'm taking legal action. I'm not going anywhere. The days that followed were a blur. Sarah and Adam didn't make any immediate moves. They didn't show up at my door, didn't call, didn't even send a text. I could tell they were trying to figure out what to do next, trying to cover their tracks, but they couldn't undo what I had already uncovered. I was done waiting for them to make their move. I wasn't going to let them keep pulling the strings of my life any longer. I'd spent years giving them everything and now it was time to take everything back. The first step was contacting a lawyer, someone who could help me with the fraud and the legal paperwork to protect my assets. I found a lawyer I trusted, Renee Bishop, a sharp, no-nonsense woman who had built a reputation for taking on family cases like mine. When I walked into her office, I felt a sense of power that I hadn't had in years. I was no longer the helpless grandmother they had tried to make me out to be. I was in control. Evelyn, it's good to meet you, Renee said, her voice warm but serious. I've gone through the documents you provided. This is very straightforward. Your daughter has forged your signature on several documents, attempted to illegally transfer your property, and has been stealing from your accounts. We have a solid case. I nodded, my heart pounding in my chest. I want to make sure she pays for what she's done. I want to take back control of my life and I want to stop her before she does anything else to hurt me. Renee gave me a reassuring smile. We'll do everything we can. But understand this is going to be a battle. Your daughter may try to make it look like you're confused or not capable of making decisions. But with the evidence we have, we're in a good position. I don't care what she says about me. I'm not confused. I'm not helpless, I replied, my voice steady but firm. I just want justice. The legal process was slow. Weeks passed and I felt every moment like a pressure building in my chest. Every time I checked my phone, I half expected Sarah or Adam to call, but the silence from them was deafening. Then one afternoon I got a letter from Clark and Associates, my lawyer's office. I tore it open with shaking hands and read through it. Evelyn, it started. I've filed the legal complaint. Sarah and Adam have been officially served notice. The next step is the hearing, where we'll present the evidence and request a temporary injunction to freeze any attempts at transferring the house or selling it. My stomach did a flip. I couldn't believe this was happening. The hearing date was set for 2 weeks later. It was a nerve-wracking wait, and every moment I spent thinking about the upcoming confrontation with Sarah made my chest tighten. But I knew I couldn't back down now. If I did, I'd be giving them everything they wanted. When the day finally came, I put on my best suit, a simple but sharp black one with a cream blouse underneath. I spent extra time fixing my hair and making sure I looked composed, despite the storm swirling inside me. I needed to show the world that I was not the fragile old woman they thought I was. As I arrived at the courthouse, I saw Sarah and Adam standing outside speaking to their lawyer. They didn't see me at first, but when they did, their faces drained of color. Sarah's eyes widened and Adam's jaw clenched. I walked past them without saying a word. I was focused on what was coming next, and I wasn't going to let them intimidate me. The courtroom was cold, quiet. The judge, a middle-aged man with glasses and a stern demeanor, sat at the front, waiting for both sides to present their case. My lawyer, Renee, stood beside me, and the opposing counsel, someone who looked like they hadn't slept in days, stood beside Sarah and Adam. Renee spoke first. She laid out the evidence, the forged documents, the illegal attempts to transfer the house, and the withdrawals Sarah had made from my accounts without my consent. The room was tense, and I could see Adam's face turning red as the truth came to light. "You have to understand," their lawyer began, trying to salvage what was left of their case. "Evelyn is an elderly woman. It's possible she doesn't fully understand what's happening. Perhaps there's confusion about the transfers and signatures." I clenched my fist. My daughter, my own flesh and blood, was trying to say I was too old to understand my own life. Too old to make my own decisions. Renee stood tall, her voice cutting through the room like a knife. "Your Honor, the documents before you are crystal clear. There is no confusion. Sarah Baker and her husband Adam have forged Evelyn's signature, withdrawn funds from her accounts, and planned to transfer her property without her knowledge or consent. There is no question of her mental state. We have medical records showing that Evelyn is of sound mind and capable of making decisions for herself. What we are seeing here is nothing less than a deliberate attempt to defraud her of her property." The judge listened, nodded, and then turned to the defense. He wasn't convinced by their argument. The moment of truth came when the judge made his ruling. "Based on the evidence provided and the arguments heard today, I am issuing a temporary injunction. The defendants, Sarah and Adam Baker, are prohibited from transferring or selling any of Evelyn Baker's property. Furthermore, the court will schedule a hearing to address the charges of fraud, forgery, and theft at a later date." I let out a breath I hadn't realized I'd been holding. It was a small victory, but it was a victory. The weeks after the hearing were some of the most difficult I'd ever faced. I had won the temporary injunction, but I could feel the storm brewing. Sarah and Adam hadn't given up. They were desperate, angry, and determined to find a way around the ruling. Every day I waited for their next move, wondering if they'd try something underhanded to get what they wanted. I tried not to let it consume me, but every time I went to bed, the weight of the situation pressed down on me. The betrayal stung every time I thought about it. I had spent my whole life giving everything to Sarah, believing in her, trusting her. Now all of that seemed like a lie. One morning, about a month after the injunction was issued, I received an unexpected call from Renee. "Evelyn, we need to talk." Her voice was serious, and I could hear a sense of urgency in it. "Of course, Renee. What's going on?" "We've got a problem. Sarah and Adam have found a way to challenge the injunction. They've hired another lawyer who specializes in elder law and financial manipulation. They're arguing that you're no longer capable of managing your own finances. They're trying to get the injunction lifted by having you evaluated for mental incompetence." I felt the ground shift beneath me. My heart stopped. What? They're going to say I'm losing my mind now? Unfortunately, yes. They've already filed the petition with the court. We're going to have to fight back harder than ever. The anger rose up inside me like fire. How dare they? After everything I had done for Sarah, after everything I had sacrificed, now they wanted to label me as some fragile old woman who couldn't even think for herself? They were trying to take everything, not just my house but my dignity, my identity. I took a deep breath and held the phone tighter. "What do we need to do?" "We need to get ahead of this, Evelyn. We'll arrange for a thorough evaluation by a neutral third party, someone who can verify that you are of sound mind and capable of making decisions. We'll also need to prepare for the hearing where they'll try to convince the judge that you're unfit. I couldn't let them do this. I wouldn't let them do this. The day of the evaluation arrived and I felt the anxiety in my bones. Sarah and Adam were waiting for me to fail, for me to show any weakness. But I was going to prove them wrong. I dressed carefully, making sure I looked as sharp and composed as possible. The evaluation was being conducted by Dr. Laura Hastings, a well-known psychologist who specialized in cognitive assessments for elderly patients. She had worked in the field for years and had a reputation for being both thorough and impartial. When I arrived at her office, Dr. Hastings greeted me with a kind but professional smile. "Evelyn, I know this must be a difficult situation, but I'm here to help," she said gently. "This assessment is just to understand how well you're managing your day-to-day life and whether you're capable of making informed decisions about your future." I nodded, sitting across from her at her desk. "I understand, doctor. I'm ready for whatever questions you need to ask me." The evaluation lasted a couple of hours. Dr. Hastings asked me about my daily routine, my finances, my health, and my memory. At first, I felt a bit nervous. It was a lot of personal information and it felt invasive. But as the questions continued, I realized something. I was fine. I had nothing to hide. I knew exactly what was going on in my life. I was still sharp, still in control. When the evaluation ended, Dr. Hastings looked at me with a thoughtful expression. "I'll make my recommendations to the court, but I can already tell you that you're mentally sharp and fully capable of managing your own affairs. Your cognitive function is in the normal range for someone of your age and you have a strong sense of independence. There is no evidence of dementia or any serious mental impairment." I breathed a sigh of relief. They had failed. The next hearing was set for just a few days later. Sarah and Adam had clearly underestimated me, thinking I was just some old woman they could manipulate into submission. They hadn't realized how much fight I had left in me. When I arrived at the courthouse, I saw Sarah and Adam sitting with their lawyer, whispering to each other. I could feel their nervous energy from across the room. They didn't look so confident now. As we entered the courtroom, I could see that Sarah was trying to maintain her composure, but her hands were shaking and her eyes kept darting to the door. Adam, on the other hand, looked tense, his arms crossed tightly over his chest. They were both on edge. The judge entered and the room fell silent. After brief introductions, the hearing began. Renee stood up first, ready to present the findings from Dr. Hastings' evaluation. "Your Honor, we have evidence that Evelyn is in full control of her mental faculties." Dr. Laura Hastings, an expert in elder care, conducted a thorough evaluation and found that Evelyn is capable of managing her own affairs. She is not suffering from any mental impairment, and the idea that she is incapable of making decisions is not supported by any evidence. Sarah's lawyer stood up, trying to argue their case. "Your Honor, the fact remains that Evelyn is an elderly woman. There are concerns about her ability to handle her finances and her living situation. We have reason to believe that she may be manipulated by outside influences, and we are requesting that the court intervene to protect her." The judge looked at them skeptically. "I'm not convinced by these arguments. We have had no credible evidence to support the claims of mental incompetence, and the assessment from Dr. Hastings clearly contradicts that theory." The tension in the courtroom was palpable. This was it. Sarah and Adam had run out of options. The judge's ruling in the last hearing left Sarah and Adam reeling. They had come into that courtroom thinking they could simply push me aside, write me off as some confused old woman, and take what was rightfully mine. But they were wrong. I had turned the tables on them. The look on Sarah's face when the judge dismissed their claims, that expression of shock and disbelief, was one I would never forget. But the battle wasn't over. They weren't the type to give up easily. I knew that, and I braced myself for the next round. Over the next week, Sarah and Adam's attempts to turn things around became more desperate. I knew they were looking for ways to sneak around the legal victory I had won, but I wasn't about to let them take another step without me being one step ahead. It was the middle of the afternoon when I got a call from Renee. "Evelyn, I've just received a new set of documents from Sarah's lawyer," she said, her voice tight with frustration. "They're not backing down. They're trying to initiate an appeal on the ruling from last week, claiming that the temporary injunction should be lifted so they can proceed with the property transfer." My heart sank, but I quickly squashed any thoughts of doubt. I wasn't going to let them get away with it. Not after everything they had already tried to do. Where do we stand, Renee? I asked, my voice resolute. We'll fight it. They're desperate, but I'm confident we'll win again. We have all the evidence in our favor. Good. Because I'm not backing down. We scheduled a meeting at her office for the following morning. I had to prepare for the final showdown. The feeling of their betrayal weighed heavily on me, but I wasn't just fighting for myself anymore. I was fighting for all the years I had spent sacrificing for Sarah. The years I had poured into her without asking for anything in return. The years that had been turned against me. That night I hardly slept. My mind raced with thoughts of what they might try next. They had already shown their cards, and I knew they wouldn't stop until they had everything. My home, my savings, my dignity. But they didn't understand something. I had lived through worse than this. I had fought battles before, and I wasn't going to lose this one. The next morning, as I sat in Renee's office, we went over the new documents Sarah and Adam had filed. They were attempting to challenge the validity of the temporary injunction, claiming that they should have a right to manage the property in what they called the best interests of their mother-in-law. I don't know what they think they can do, Renee said, shaking her head. They know the court has already ruled in your favor, but they're trying to use the appeal process to stall for time. They want to make this as difficult for you as possible. I don't care about the delays, I said, my voice calm. I'm going to end this once and for all. Let them try to appeal. We'll hit them with everything we've got. Renee smiled at my confidence. I like the way you think. Let's do this. The appeal hearing came quickly. It was set in front of the same judge who had ruled in my favor before. This time, however, the courtroom was tense. Sarah and Adam sat together, their lawyer beside them, while I sat across the room with Renee, feeling more powerful than ever. When the judge entered, his gaze flicked over to Sarah and Adam. He looked at the documents they'd presented but didn't seem impressed. I've already ruled on this matter, the judge said, his voice even. You're asking me to reconsider my previous decision, based on the same arguments that were presented before. This court is not in the habit of overturning decisions without new, compelling evidence. I could see Sarah's jaw tighten. She knew this wasn't going the way she had hoped. Your Honor, Sarah's lawyer stood, his voice faltering slightly. We're requesting a temporary lifting of the injunction so that we can proceed with the necessary financial actions regarding Evelyn's property. It's critical that we move forward for her own good. The judge gave a long sigh and adjusted his glasses, clearly unimpressed. Tell me, Mr. Wilkins, what exactly is so urgent about transferring a house that is clearly still in dispute? There was a long pause as the lawyer fumbled with his papers. It's about the future security of Evelyn's assets, Your Honor, he said. We believe it's in her best interests to allow the house to be transferred while further evaluations are completed. The judge leaned forward. This is exactly the same argument you've made before, and it's been dismissed. If there's no new evidence to present, I see no reason to change my decision. At this point, the judge looked directly at Sarah and Adam. Their faces were pale, their bodies tense. I could see them exchange a quick glance before Sarah's lawyer reluctantly sat back down. It was done. The judge's decision to deny the appeal was swift and final. The courtroom was silent as he issued his verdict, and as soon as the gavel came down, I felt a sense of relief wash over me. I had won. They had tried everything, forging documents, stealing from me, attempting to declare me incompetent, but none of it had worked. Sarah and Adam had lost. Later that afternoon I returned home, my heart still racing from the day's events. The house that had been my sanctuary for so many years felt different now. I walked through the rooms slowly, reflecting on everything I had fought for. But the fight wasn't just about protecting my property. It was about protecting my dignity, my right to live my life on my own terms, without manipulation or deceit. I had taken back control, and there was no turning back now. If you've ever felt betrayed or found strength in the face of adversity, I'd love to hear your story. Share your thoughts in the comments below. If you enjoyed this journey of resilience and justice, don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on notifications for more stories that inspire. Your support means everything, and I can't wait to share the next chapter with you.